Peace. I just wanted to take a moment and build briefly and address Star from Star in the Morning Show directly in regards to a radio show that he recently did, asking what was the 5% or the God's and Earth stance in regards to Charlamagne. And if you're not familiar with what's going on with Charlamagne right now, one of the hosts of the Breakfast Club, there's a rape incident that has resurfaced from some years back. Star actually interviewed the woman that was cited in that case and charged Charlamagne with rape. And because Charlamagne uses the God in his name, Star was asking, what is the 5% or our collective stance in regards to Charlamagne's past, as well as him actually using God in his name? So I just wanted to take a moment to address that. Number one, Charlamagne is not a 5%er. Just like a lot of people nowadays, especially in the hip-hop industry, that use God in their name, whether it's lit God, light God, ugly God, whatever they want to use, they're not 5%ers. They may or may not even be influenced by the 5% as well. And because of that, we're not going around being the thought police on everybody that uses God in their name. Anybody can use that in their name. We don't have a trademark, or we don't license that out to people. Now, if a person claims to be a 5%er and they're actually saying that someone was responsible for teaching them, now there's a system of checks and balances that comes into play, and a person is held accountable for what they say out of their mouth because they claim to be a representative or an ambassador of a culture. He's never put himself in that position to take on that responsibility. And you know, sometimes people do things like that. They use words or even names that sound good, but the responsibility and the accountability that goes along with that, a lot of times they don't want to deal with that particular part of it. So that's the first thing. He's not a 5%er. In some of his past interviews, he talked about how he was influenced by the 5%, and because of his age, growing up in an era during a golden age of hip-hop, a lot of people were influenced by the 5% during that time. But not everybody actually took on the culture in a very formal way when it comes to being responsible and accountable for the principles and values that we live according to. So that's number one. He's not a 5%er. He's never claimed to be a 5%er. Just like a lot of people out here nowadays are not 5%ers. They just use God because I guess it sounds good. Number two, his past in regards to rape, we don't advocate anything like that. And that right there shows you that he's not in alignment with what we teach as civilized people. We teach that the original woman or the black woman is symbolic to the earth, and we don't pillage the earth. We have respect for our women as well as the environment because she is actually in alignment with the planet Earth, and that is how we live this culture. So when you hear a person talking like that, where they don't have a healthy sense of respect for women or the planet in terms of environmental justice, that tells you right there that this person is not learning the principles and the values that we actually live by. So in terms of a collective stance, you can talk to any average 5%er and they're gonna reiterate the exact same thing that I'm saying. We don't advocate rape or taking advantage of or misusing or abusing women, period. We have respect for the woman. When you look at our universal flag, which is the sun, moon, and stars, the sun that encircles the moon and the star represents the man. And the man is no different than a protective hedge that is around his family as well as a protective hedge around his community. So the sun, moon, and star are symbolic to the man, woman, and child. The 7 in the center represents God or perfection, which means that godliness or divinity should be central to your family unit, because that family unit is seminal to the unit of the community as well as the people and the overall human family. So that is right in our flag. If there is no healthy sense of respect for our women, then there is obviously no healthy sense of respect for the child, which throws the whole idea or the concept of what our universal flag represents off. So when you hear a person that's talking like that, obviously they are not a person that represents the principles and the values that we actually live by. So again, any average 5%er will tell you that the things that he's talking about, how he represents himself, his brand, his profession, is not something that you would see a 5%er actually doing. You know, he's into, I mean, all you got to do is look at a video on YouTube of his most savage moments. He has no respect for women. You look at the things that he's tweeted. You look at the way in which he's responded to questions in interviews, off-the-cuff interviews, where he's actually had an opportunity to think about what he said before he said it. And you don't see a healthy sense of respect for women, just period, across the board. So that whole idea of the God on his name is just as empty and generic as a lot of people nowadays use in this hip-hop industry in particular. And as the 5%, we're not going around being the thought police to strive to check every single person that chooses to use God in their name. Now, if they're claiming to be a 5%er, that's something different. So I will, this was inspiring, it was empowering, it was educational. It just gave those of you some perspective on, you know, that radio show that Star from Star in the Morning actually put out, and just some clarity on where we collectively stand in regards to this whole incident about Charlamagne or anybody that's running around calling themselves God. Peace.